Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Last month, a survey conducted by a couple of umbrella institutions for the arts raised concern among Bronx arts and cultural organizations that revised guidelines and awards from the Department of Cultural Affairs, as well as the grant-making process, are going to leave Bronx arts and performance organizations with less support than before. In fact, the survey by Art New York and Dance NYC revealed that citywide in fiscal year 24, 69% of the city's arts and performance organizations will receive decreased funding. In the Bronx, hold your breath, according to the survey, 100% of the arts and performance organizations will receive decreased funding. This, of course, has raised concern of some of the borough's most important cultural institutions. So tonight, we're going to explore their apprehension about future funding, also get our arms around the importance and impact of Bronx arts and performance organizations. So please join me in welcoming the Executive Director of the Bronx Council on the Arts, Viviana Bianchi. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Gary.
Nice to have you with us. And the Executive Director of the Bronx Arts Ensemble, Judith Insell. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again, Gary.
Always good to have you folks around because you guys, and listen, I'm going to tell my friends and neighbors from the Bronx, you guys are saving our borough with all the stuff that you do. You told me that you were fully funded last year, right?
A little
but you're concerned that beginning with the fiscal year 24 and into 25, that begins in just a couple of weeks, that might not be the case. In addition to the survey that I referred to, according to the IBO, the Independent Budget Office, 80% of organizations that applied this year are getting reductions in funding or no funding at all. So can you assess the impact that this could have on our arts community? Like, what are your concerns?
Well, 2024 was already a very tough year for a lot of organizations, and I'm sure Judy will speak more directly to that point. But what we are afraid of is what 2025 fiscal year will bring for artists and arts organizations in the borough. The Bronx Council on the Arts is a re-grantor of public funds, and we fund approximately 200 grantees a year. So if funds get cut, it will be disastrous.
Could you just define the 200? Like, are we talking about individuals? Are we talking about organizations?
It's a split between individuals and organizations. Probably 70 of those that I mentioned are artists, individuals, and about 50 or so will be organizations.
I just want to mention, we do this with numbers all the time. So 200, they say, 200. Well, that's not 1,000, that's not 10,000. But I want you to count on your fingers and think about the number of Bronx people and organizations who will be affected.
I think it's also important because the Bronx Council on the Arts is the only re-grantor in the Bronx for arts and arts culture.
Re-grantor, that's an important distinction.
Yeah, we
because,
are.
In other words, the Bronx Arts Ensemble is a grantee. I mean, they get,
would be a grantee of ours if they had a smaller budget. Exactly, and many like those. So we are basically the re-grantors for the city here because there are 5 councils or 4 now. We have our boots on the ground, our ears to the ground. We know what's happening locally, and they entrust us to distribute funding for, small organizations.
Sure. In other words, if it comes out of the city, whether it comes out of the city council or when it comes out of the mayor's office or whatever, the Department of Cultural Affairs, obviously, then they don't know who to give it to, and so that's the importance of the Bronx Council of the Arts.
Yes, it is, if you will. They know who to give it to, but we have a very simple application process. They trust us, so they come to us.
Talk about, you could talk about some of the groups that you fund. What do they do? And then, what ultimate effect do they have? There's people with jobs, there's careers, there's education. So talk a little bit about your programs and those kinds of things.
Well, through the grants that we give, our grantees serve approximately 39,000 community audiences. Because
wait, now we really want to count.
Now we're talking about numbers, right?
Count all the way.
And we're talking about youth and seniors, and because all of our grants require a public component, and so they do shows, or they do readings, or they do concerts, or they do all kinds of cultural offerings. So that is an impactful number.
I got a list here. There's education, there's arts organizations, there's performing organizations.
Yes.
I guess it also includes our museums, the wonderful Bronx Museum of the Arts, right?
That you get into the technical things. We can only fund organizations that are with budgets under 100,000.
How badly will they be hurt?
It will be disastrous if
Disastrous.
we get, yes, that's what I would put it. It will be disastrous if we get less money than we got last year. And
because last year was, frankly, so
there already was a little reduced.
I think it came from your folks. You received 523 applications. We're only able to fund 155, about a quarter.
Exactly, about 35% of that.
Wow.
That is in all of our funding streams. I mean, you have to understand it's very complicated, but from the city, it will be horrible. Probably we will.
Last thing before we bring Ms. Insell into this. It involves jobs, it involves...
Yeah, because we contract with, I forget how many, but all the artists that work with us, and same with Judith, get paid. And we work with over 100 artists every year that we pay for either performances or teaching artists or exhibiting artists or curators or so on and so forth.
Will it hurt things like the Bronx recognizes its own?
That's re-grants from the city, yes, of course.
All right, Gary took a nice deep breath.
No, everything will get cut. Everything will get cut.
Ms. Insell, let's just talk about the Bronx Arts Ensemble. For more than 60 years, you folks have served the Bronx. For people who don't know what you do, just talk about all the decades and all the different things that you provide for the Bronx.
So for over 5 decades now, we've been providing free performances in all parts of the borough. It's not just in one area. We go to all different parts of the borough when we have significant funding. So I'm going to put that caveat there because we did not have that kind of funding this year from the Department.
This year from 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we could not do business as usual this year with our concert programs.
Just let's delve into that for a second. What was cut? Or I can't even imagine you making the decision to say, "Oh, well, you get or you don't get."
So
we'll go to this school, but not that school. I mean, I'm working on this. I can't. I don't get it. Go ahead.
I mean, it's pretty hard to make decisions like that. Because we received the notice so late in the fiscal year that we're in, we were able to go only to perform in the districts where our council member support was given to us. So this is
because that funding basically came from council members
as
correct. Opposed to the DCA,
that's
the Department
correct.
of Cultural Affairs.
So we are accustomed to receiving both. So we usually receive money from the Department of Cultural Affairs through the Cultural Development Fund, and
the CDF, yeah,
and also councilmatic member items or initiatives to help us to execute the work as well.
Your folks wanted to congratulate and thank Eric Dinowitz, right? Kevin Riley, Christy Marmorato, and Oswald Felice for stepping up.
Yes,
Maybe
they are the
reach
four.
out to others. Can you put a dollar amount on that? In other words, how much you had or how much you used to get and how much you're not getting?
Well, let me just put it this way. If we talk about Cultural Development Fund money, what we had the previous year was about $163,000. And this year we got zero.
Sorry, the silence is deafening intentionally. Zero.
Yes.
And you know, I have to say, when you deal with monies like that, I thought you were going to say like maybe, you know, when you said 100, I said, well, it's not 100 million. I'm sorry, it's only $100,000. That's not a lot of money.
I know it's not, but it employs a
dealing
lot
with
of
billions
professional
of
musicians.
Well, yes. And I meant it's not a lot of money in the eyes of the city budget when you look
Correct.
at the billions
Oh,
that are
no.
spent.
Nothing.
I want to show this
Dropping the
video. You and the folks at the Bronx Arts Ensemble explained very well. So basically, the city council discretionary funding is there, but the DCA funding is not.
Right.
And your anticipation is it's not going to be there again, and you have to then go, quote unquote, shop around to individual council members to say, please help.
Yes.
Okay, here's a video that you did, and we're, in all fairness, gonna take a look.
My name is Judith Insell, and I'm the executive director of the Bronx Arts Ensemble. We're serving all the communities of the Bronx. And this is really important because many people who live in the Bronx can't actually afford to go out of the borough to experience a cultural happening. So we brought in the musicians of the Bronx Arts Ensemble to play chamber music while they were doing the practice of yoga. And we also supplied them with one of our master teaching artists to actually present them with the yoga practice. We are really fortunate to have as members of the Bronx Arts Ensemble some of the top players in New York City. We actually go into the communities where the people live and we schedule performances. And we also do the same thing in the classrooms where we work. We present culturally responsive curriculum where the students can experience different aspects of arts and culture that relate to them. So if the budget cuts in the next fiscal year come out, we will be in grave danger if we are cut any further in our funding. If we do sustain any further cuts in funding from the city, we certainly can't present live performances like the one we had today. These are community building activities, and this is part of our mission and vision of the Bronx Arts Ensemble. It's been a tremendous challenge to do any work at all in our borough. And without the support of individual council members, there actually would be no live performances by the Bronx Arts Ensemble this year.
One of the things I really like about that video, it's not a traditional music performance. In other words, like we saw pictures of orchestras and other things. So you provided the music and kind of the atmosphere for a yoga class.
Actually, we provided even more. That is one of our teaching artists.
Oh, wow.
So that yoga instructor works for the Bronx Arts Ensemble as well.
So that, again, you know, my thought, if I were in charge, I'd put one of these in every neighborhood in the Bronx, right? This is, we're wondering about mental health and people acting out, and of course the frustration that we all live in. This is how we address that. So what you were just telling me while that was playing about what the BCA, what the Bronx Council of the Arts
Yeah,
does.
because we've been in the community for 60 years as culture equity warriors, but also we offer, aside from the Regrants program, which is one of our main programs, we offer exhibitions and concerts and writing workshops and manage the Sukasa program for seniors. So there are other components that get funded also by the city that if they get cut, it's going to be the same.
Right.
That we will have to cut our cultural programming as well.
This is what I really wanted to emphasize with this program, that it's, and because you briefly mentioned it earlier, it's about jobs. It's about, you know, not only, I mean, I'm interested in the development of our culture, but it also is about, as Judith just said, it's also about, you know, getting an artist to have an opportunity to teach better. Is there a problem? One of the things that I've heard talking from people, you know, to do all these wonderful programs, is there a problem with the process, the funding, the granting process?
Indeed. You have another show for that?
Yes.
The two of them were like, do you want to? We'll give you both a chance to talk about it. Then.
It's the lateness in which we receive notifications and then when we
You
receive
said
the
you
funds.
received notification right at the end.
So-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I mean,
it's okay.
I'm
It's the
happy to
same thing.
outline exactly what happened to us. So the fiscal year for the city funding starts July 1st of every year.
So we're talking July 1st, 2023?
Correct.
Okay.
So July 1st, 2023 came. we had to do what we always do, which is we begin to do our concert programming. We assume...
Because you start in the summer,
Right.
etc.
We start in July in Van Cortlandt Park with live performances. We assumed that we would get funded, as we always have. We've been getting funding from the Department of Cultural Affairs for over 40 years.
I was going to say for decades, obviously.
Yeah, for over 40 years. So we started to do our work, and we waited for an award letter. So the award letter has gotten later and later.
I really want to break this down. So you then went into you have a development person who writes the grants.
Yes.
That person has to be paid. You
Yes,
understand
that's
that?
correct.
Right? In other words, the rock is rolling down the hill here. And you began that process in plenty of time,
Yes,
sometime in the spring or even the beginning of the year, or something.
Absolutely. So we applied as everyone else did in the process, and assumed that we would be receiving the kind of support we had received in prior years, and waited for an award letter.
So even though July 1st came, the city and the mayor, the council and the mayor agreed on a budget at some point, you still didn't hear.
We waited for October,
October?
November.
I was thinking, well, a couple of weeks.
January.
Really?
And we found out in February of 2024.
And you found out you were getting less than you thought?
Well, we got zero.
Oh. So how did you survive, and what did you do with the people who, this is a very practical question, who needed to be paid along the way?
Well, we paid them along the way, and we had to go into our reserve funding. So good thing that the founder, Bill Scribner, actually planned ahead for a disaster like this, because it was a disaster.
Did he really? Wow. So what next, especially if this holds? I mean, are you going to have to ask for more discretionary funding? I'm sure you'll be right
yes.
online when it comes to participatory budgeting.
Yes,
I'm guessing.
We are asking our council members for more support. In fact, we got one letter yesterday of confirmation from one of them already, because as they actually explained in their letter, they understood that if we were going to plan and execute properly, that we needed to know ahead of July 1st whether or not we were going to have the money.
Of course. And I must say, I attended the Juneteenth celebration that the Bronx Arts Ensemble participated in Van Cortlandt Park. It was wonderful. There were hundreds of people there.
That's correct.
And that's the kind of event that you do that really is responsive to the grassroots people of this borough. Do you think the reason it took them so long to at least say it was because they were trying to find the money, or do you? I don't know if it's a fair question. Is it just not efficient, or do they not? How could the Department of Cultural Affairs not understand the value, the cultural value of the Bronx Arts Ensemble and other organizations?
Right, we're not the only one, and I have to say that I just want to reiterate, we were waiting for a letter. So we got a letter in February, and we got...
Not even a phone call, hey, Ms. Insell,
right,
we want to talk.
Nothing ahead of that, and then the funding from the council members, their member items, and the cultural initiatives that we received are tied to that office. So we didn't actually get that funding until April. So we went from July
almost a whole year
yes.
without being part. Well, I must say you and your colleagues then are my heroes, because you're doing very well.
We kept it going somehow.
Somehow. Let's just bring Ms. Bianchi back in. What do you anticipate going to happen with all the organizations you deal with, whether it's arts organizations, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, if as pre-granters, if we get less money, they are going to get defunded as well.
Right.
So the fear is that in the smaller organizations who offer everything for free and do everything for free, if they don't get funded, there won't be less projects.
You know, that was one. I don't have those numbers in front of me. That was one of the other things in that survey, was they measured which organizations were going to get. It must be a very difficult task for you to want to have to call somebody and say, well, sorry, you know, it's like a ball player being demoted to the minor leagues or something.
Or the delay in funding for them that also had to go, you know, through doing programming without having the funds to do them. So.
Is there, and I guess I'll ask both of you, is there an active dialogue at least, or it's really just like, you know, you send the grant to
No,
you send
there's
your
an
grant
active.
application?
This is what I mean about the councils. We are, you know,
The
very
council does
they
it, but
can-
you had does the DCA call you or interact?
Well,
Much like I did and said, hey, Judith, there's a problem. Can I help?
Well, I have to say we have a responsive program officer, but all he can actually do is relay, you know, policy and procedures
Yes,
to
of
us.
course.
I think that what has happened and will continue to happen in the next few weeks has been a galvanizing force of arts and culture institutions trying to advocate for this not to happen again, for us to actually get funded in a way that we can continue to do our work. So I think I've been down to City Hall, 5 or 6 times this
Really?
year, since February. From many kinds.
They probably hate seeing you by now.
From council budget hearings where I make statements to us having rallies on the steps of City Hall. We're trying. We're trying to be heard.
You know, it's very similar to what I hear from Parks people. Parks people are saying the same thing, that, you know, we're not going to be able to run the programs we run in the parks and things like that. One of the things I think that came out of your office was that people can't afford to go to cultural events outside the borough, right? I mean, so it'd be, or was that your office, or one of, or both of them? And so this becomes, you know, even more important. You can say, well, okay, we have, you know, the Museum of Art downtown, of modern art downtown, but that doesn't help a lot of people in the Bronx.
And I want to add to what Judith is saying, that this year was especially disconcerting because we didn't know how much the budget cuts to the city were going to be. And that facing off of a 25% cut first, and then another 25%, and then we were waiting for a third 25% cut. You know, makes it impossible really to manage across the board, across the whole
Well, I just
sector.
can't imagine the Bronx Arts Ensemble managing those wonderful programs and events and all that. This is, forgive my naivete, but can the state cultural affairs department be of any help? Get it on a budget line with maybe some of the assembly members or something, or it's really you'd be starting from scratch.
And you would, we all received support from the New York State Council on the Arts.
Correct.
Yeah, no, we do. But
what is cultural mapping?
Oh, cultural mapping. Well, we started about 5 years ago to have a map on our website. We wanted to track all the cultural institutions and artists in the borough as an advocacy tool, not only against displacement, with all the development that is happening. And
conceptually, it sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Are we getting there? Is it? I
we
remember
do.
that. In fact, I do remember that there were requests, if you have an arts organization, let us know, and we're going to put it on the map.
We're trying to continue to do that. We're going to launch a survey again, and I encourage all artists to put their names down there, and all institutions, because as a council, it helps us also advocate for more support for the borough. We know that the Bronx has always been underfunded, right? So that's our role.
I only groan because I've been sitting here for a long time.
Changed.
So, Ms. Insell, what do we tell the general public that maybe can help? I mean, is it call your council member, but the council members are helping? It's you know what
I mean, you can actually write to the mayor. There was a big campaign to actually write to the mayor's office directly and say, this is important. We are economic engines, actually. We are employing people to do this work. When we are having performances, we're also in the neighborhoods that we're in, the audience members, the performers, everybody involved actually is giving to the economy of that neighborhood. After yesterday's Juneteenth event, my husband and I and 2 people went to a restaurant across the street from
the park.
where the
Oh, well,
event
now
was.
you got to tell us what restaurant. Can you say? Are you allowed to say?
I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to advertise it, but I don't know.
Well, that's what we want to do. Give somebody.
Oh, well, the Santa Fe restaurant.
I know that one, the
restaurant.
Mexican restaurant across the street.
So,
from
and
the park.
we weren't the only ones there from the Juneteenth event. There were like 4 or 5 other tables of people there
and I'm
after
sure
that event.
some of the local establishments on Broadway saw
Right.
it. The Bronx
right.
Ale House. And
Yeah,
the BX
exactly.
Steakhouse.
We are actually helping them. We are an economic engine. Every time we have a performance, somebody is buying something in that neighborhood beyond us presenting them with a free concert. So our free concert actually gives them money to go to the bodega.
And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Talk about educating the students that get to
Right.
see real musicians and talk to real musicians and all that. So for you, what do you recommend? Do the organizations have to get to you? I mean, she deals with individuals a little more than you deal with organizations, but talk about that a little
I
bit.
encourage the artists with whom we work to also, advocate for themselves. They have to write to the mayor. They have to write to the city. They have to, explain their plea. I mean, they're amazing creatives. Most of what they do it for free.
So let's be real creative in approaching City Hall.
Yeah.
Viviana Bianchi, Executive Director of the Bronx Council of the Arts, thank you so much for everything you do, and thanks for being with us. And the same goes for the Executive Director of the BAE, the Bronx Arts Ensemble. Judith, thank you, and all your colleagues as well. Folks, we thank our producer, Rebecca Hemick. Our director is Will Guzman. Our editor is Diaz, the cast of thousands who work with us here in the studio. Next week, we'll talk about the world's largest food market. Where is that? Of course, Hunts Point. So if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, we will see you then. Good night.